Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is LeBeau, and I have the honor of serving as the co-chair of the Green Party of Florida. And joining us here today, we have a very special treat. Our presidential candidate for 2020, Howie Hawkins, has agreed to come and talk to Green Floridians about the past and the future and the Green Party in general. So please give a warm welcome to Howie Hawkins. Hi, Howie. How are you today?
I'm good, LeBeau. Thanks for having me.
I can imagine that it must be nice. I see you're still out there all the time. I see you live streaming, meeting with Young Greens, etc. But I hope you're getting a little bit of rest after that long, arduous campaign.
Yeah, it's a little slower, but not by much.
Right. That's the kind of guy you are. All right. So I've often heard you say on the campaign trail that you had no plans to run for president, that you were in fact drafted. So that leads me to two questions I'll ask you. One of them is about you. Why would people want to draft you? What have you done that makes people think that you'd be a great face for the Green Party, U.S.?
Yeah, well, it wasn't the whole Green Party. It was a group of people. They put together a campaign, and their secret plan was to draft me. When they were doing this, I was working 12-hour shifts at the post office, just having completed a run for governor in New York. 7 days a week. It's over the holiday season, peak season. So I didn't even have Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year's off. And so I opened my email in January. They got a whole campaign laid out. I had no plans to do this. But I looked around and they convinced me that I probably should run. When I say they, a prominent person, probably the one that persuaded me the most was Bruce Dixon, who I've known a long time. He was the managing editor of the Black Agenda Report. He passed last year. And a number of other people, Kevin Zeese, who also died last year, Margaret Flowers, Andrea Merida, and about a dozen people. And so it took me a few months. And the first thing I said was, well, let's do an exploratory committee and make sure you're not the only ones. And we got a good response. So we went ahead.
All right. So you're being humble. That was a leading question. I want to talk about why you particularly, what have you done in your involvement with the Green Party US and the Green Party New York that makes people think that you should represent us electorally?
Well, I've run 3 times for governor in New York, each time getting us enough votes to get a ballot line. And one year I got 5%, which really surprised Andrew Cuomo because he was planning to run up the vote that year. That was his second election, get more than he got in 2010, get more than his father, Mario Cuomo, ever got as governor, and get ready to run for president. And at the end of the election, he got less, and I'm sitting there with 5%. And he had to move our way. We got a ban on fracking, a $15 minimum wage, paid family leave, and some other things that he hadn't supported before. But after that election, he did. So, we had an impact. And then I wrote an article. I called it From the Bottom Up. They retitled it The Case for an Independent Left Party, subtitle From the Bottom Up, that laid out, my perspective on how the Green Party can build from the bottom up by focusing on local elections to the point where it can become a major force in American politics. And I think a number of the people that drafted me liked that perspective in that article. And so they wanted to make that one of the messages of the presidential campaign. And then, I've been involved in the Greens since the very first national organizing meeting we had in August 1984. So I think they figured, a lot of Greens out there might know me. At least they know I'm a Green. I've been here the whole time. So there was no question about that.
Excellent. So you hit on another question that actually goes to my second part of the question. You said that you wrote a piece that talked about local organizing and local power. A lot of the names that you mentioned in the Draft Howie campaign are people who believe in local organizing. I often hear people who are not in the Green Party say we should abandon the presidential campaigns and focus on local. And why is it that we don't do that, Howie? Why do we ignore local campaigns and only focus once every 4 years on running presidents?
Well, we don't ignore local campaigns. I mean, from the start in 1984, the whole idea was to build a grassroots base. And I wouldn't say we've been good at organizing, but I think we still exist because we're needed. Most of our people are really pissed off former Democrats. And after beating their head against the wall, they finally realized they're fighting the Democrats before they even get to the Republicans. So we keep being replenished. And over the years, we've won 1,200 local elections. We have over 100 people in office right now. And one of my messages in the campaign is we can expand that to thousands. And on that foundation, the local elected officials begin getting into state legislatures and the US House. And then when we got a caucus in the House and we run a presidential ticket, will be hard to ignore, but we're not there yet. So why do we run for president? Well, a number of reasons. One is it's a good platform to raise our issues. And that builds support when people run on them at the local and state or congressional level. Second thing is, as we get out there and campaign, we can recruit new members. So it's a party building exercise. And then also, in order to run local elections and get on a ballot, you need a ballot line. It's a lot easier with a ballot line than without. And in about 40 of the 50 states, the presidential vote helps determine whether you have a ballot line for the next election cycle. And people have to understand, in a lot of states, without a ballot line, you're pretty much denied access to the ballot. Take the example, if you want to run as an independent for Congress without a ballot line, most states it's thousands, in some states, tens of thousands of signatures. In Georgia, it's over 20,000. Illinois, it's over 15,000. Indiana, it's over 40,000. You want to run as an independent for the House of Commons in the United Kingdom, it's 10 signatures. You want to do it in New Zealand, it's 2 signatures. In India, it's 2 signatures. In Canada next door, it's 100 signatures. And if you're in a rural riding, that's their districts, they call them ridings, it's only 50 signatures. Here it's thousands or tens of thousands in most states. That's why the ballot lines are so important and why the presidential election is part of setting it up so we can run local candidates.
Wow, it's almost as if the system was designed to help the wealthy, but and rolling right into that.
Yeah, it is. It was and it is.
I am newer to the party. I was brought in by Jill, who ran in 2016 and 2012. I'm sorry, Jill Stein, no disrespect to the doctor. And your campaign is the first that I've seen, not just in the Green Party, but overall, that explicitly ran on being socialist. Now, a lot of people are going to tell you or tell me that socialism is a scare word, that it turns people off. Nonetheless, the Green Party, by vote, if I understand correctly, is an avowed eco-socialist party. So how should local and state parties handle the S word? Should we avoid it, or should we embrace it and educate?
We should educate around it. You know, it was a conversation stopper for decades, particularly after the McCarthy era. And it equated socialism, which includes democratic socialism, with Stalinism, which is, a very repressive dictatorial form of, state ownership of the means of production. Socialism was always about democratic worker and community control. So that's one of the things we need to educate on. Now it's a conversation starter. I think Bernie Sanders helped with that. I think the right-wing media helped with that by calling Obama a socialist. And people are saying, well, Obama ain't that bad. Maybe I'm a socialist. So people are talking about it. Most people's conception of socialism is social programs. Really New Deal liberalism, as opposed to an economic democracy based on social ownership of the big businesses and banks, which is, part of the education we got to do. And it's important to talk about it because we need system change, not just reforms to capitalism. If we're environmentalists, capitalism is our enemy because it's structured to have endless growth. And you can't have that on a finite planet. It's destroying the environment. If you want equality or equitable distribution of income and wealth, capitalism pays you a fixed wage And the owners of the business gets all the extra value you create. And that creates growing and now extreme inequality. You want democracy, concentrated wealth, concentrated economic power translates into concentrated political power, campaign contributions, lobbying, and also the rich decide whether the government gets financed or not, whether those bonds sell on Wall Street or at what cost, or whether a business will invest in a jurisdiction making reforms or they're going to move their assets somewhere else. So that power isn't even up for election under capitalism. So democracy needs socialism, the economic democracy, political and economic democracy. You can't have full political democracy without economic democracy. Those are some of the things that we need to talk about in educating people about socialism. It goes beyond, the kind of stuff Bernie Sanders was talking about. And in Europe they have it, and the Social Democratic Party and Labor Party have it. There's social programs. The problem is that concentrated economic power of the rich, they use that to roll those programs back, so they're never secure. And we've seen that happen, in this so-called neoliberal era of privatization and deregulation in capitalism.
I really appreciate all of our Green Party candidates for president in bringing these concepts to the table, either during their runs or before their runs. You were a trailblazer, not only being a founder of the party, you're the father of the American Green New Deal, having run on in New York. And you also brought to the conversation, I don't know if you coined it, but you brought to the conversation a term that I'm hearing more and more, even though your campaign is winding down, and that is eco-socialism. Eco-socialism. When we say eco-socialism, are we just adding ecology to socialism, or do those words have a synergy? Do they enhance each other? How is eco-socialism different than social-minded or ecology-minded socialism?
Well, in the 19th and 20th centuries, socialism was primarily concerned with increasing production to solve the scarcity and poverty problem. So it was very much not questioning, in most cases, the kinds of technologies and the strive for endless growth that capitalism had. They just wanted to make sure that what was produced was equitably distributed and under the control of workers and communities. There were exceptions to that. There were very ecologically minded socialists like William Morris in England, and actually anarchists in that wing, the libertarian wing of socialism, like Peter Kropotkin. But we say ecological socialism today because today's not the problem. The problem is not production. We're plenty productive to produce everything we need. We need to learn how to produce it within ecological limits, given the enormous environmental crisis we face. It's not just climate change. It's mass species extinctions from a variety of sources, including climate change, which can lead to ecosystem collapse, and then agricultural collapse, and then we lose our ability to feed ourselves, or at least most of us. There are other, what they call planetary boundaries being passed, ocean acidification. As it gets more acid, all the shellfish can't form shells. Coral will die. The whole ocean ecosystem is being simplified and destroyed. And I could go on. So we have a massive environmental problem that's an existential problem. So socialism needs to be ecological. And to have an ecological, sustainable society, it needs to be socialist. So we can plan to meet everybody's basic needs within ecological limits. Under capitalism, there's no way to control that.
Here recently in Florida, on the ballot in November of 2020, a scheme was introduced by a old crony of Rick Scott. Rick Scott is one of our senators who used to be our governor here. I think you probably know a little bit about him. And he funded what seems to be a one-man campaign to pass top 2 jungle primaries here in the state of Florida. Also, similar question was on the Alaska ballot. It was tied in with RCB. So Alaska passed ranked choice voting along with a top 4 jungle primary. This is still a hot topic here in the state of Florida. So I want to ask you about 3 different subjects that are all together. Number one, ranked choice voting. Number two, jungle primaries. And number three, the concept of open primaries in general and whether or not you support them.
Well, let me start with the primaries first. I'm opposed to open primaries. Party members should decide who the nominees of the party are, not people that just wander in to vote and then wander out probably. You can't have parties that are politically consistent and responsive to their own members if you just allow anybody to come in and vote. The problem with jungle primaries, and they're explicitly designed this way and promoted by corporate elites to favor the major parties. So like in California, they have it. It's the top two jungle primary. So in a Democratic district, you end up with 2 Democrats on a general election. In a Republican district, you generally end up with 2 Republicans. And it makes it hard for the Green Party and other third parties to get past the primary in June to the general election in November. And that's explicitly designed by the elites because they don't want the Green Party to challenge them. Because our platform is popular. You look at public opinion polls, the people want Medicare for all. They want a Green New Deal. They want tuition-free college. They want a job guarantee. They want new priorities, less military spending, and put that money into social and environmental protections. Our platform is more popular than the Democratic and Republican platforms. So they're trying to preempt us from even getting a hearing in elections. So I'm opposed to jungle primaries. Now, we got another problem is we have plurality voting in this country. And the problem there is the Greens, people say, I like the Greens, but I gotta settle for the lesser evil Democrats to stop those far-right racist Republicans. So our vote is much lower than our real support. And that dynamic has enduring power. I'm writing an article about this, and I've got a chart somebody else did that goes to all the presidential elections, 46 of them, since the Liberty Party was the first left party to run as a third party and challenge slavery back in 1840. And in 46 elections, third parties got less than 5%, usually well less than 5%, more like a fraction of a percent or 1%. A good year is 2%, except 3 times. The Free Soil Party got 10%, Martin Van Buren, 1848. The People's Party, the Populists, James Weaver got 9% in 1892. And then Robert La Follette, the Progressive candidate, got 17% in 1924. In all those races, the third party, even in those 3 races where they got a bigger percentage, they came in third. They were marginal. That's how powerful this, spoiler problem is. Now with ranked choice voting, in plurality voting, you vote for one candidate and for one seat. And the plurality wins. And it often is a plurality, not a majority. In ranked choice voting, you rank your preferences 1, 2, 3. And if your candidate isn't near getting elected in the first round, say it's a 1-seat office, an executive office like president. If nobody gets a majority in the first round, the last place candidate is eliminated and their ballots go to their second choices. It's called an instant runoff. So instead of like in Georgia where you have one election and nobody got over 50%, so then you have another election with the top 2. This is a series of instant runoffs until somebody gets a majority. So in that system, you can vote for the Green Party without worrying about helping the Republicans because you can rank the Democrats second. And that gets rid of the spoiler problem, the lesser evil problem, and we will not have a left that really participates in American politics, I believe, until we get ranked choice voting. And not just for those executive offices where you have 1 seat, but especially for legislative bodies where you can have multi-winner districts. And the winning threshold then is not a majority, it's a smaller percentage. What that enables is every political persuasion to get their proportional share of seats in the same proportion as they have support among the voters. And that's the real game changer. And I think after we've had such screw ups with the Electoral College, including this year. I mean, Trump lost by 7.1 million votes, but he was with as few as, I think it was 21,462 voters in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia had voted for Trump instead of Biden. Biden would be the president now. It was that close. The Electoral College distorts everything. So people are open to changes, and they also want more voices and more choices. So ranked choice voting, I think, is an idea whose time has come. I'm not optimistic we can get much of the green demands, or any of them really, through the Biden administration, but we can get ranked choice voting. We've got it now in 38 cities and 2 states, and there are serious campaigns going on now in 20 states. So I think that's probably the most important thing we can work on in the next 2 to 4 years. And if we get it at the local and state levels, then we can take on the federal government and get proportional representation in Congress through multi-seat ranked choice voting. There's a bill for that called the Fair Representation Act. And we can get the Electoral College abolished and have a ranked choice national popular vote for president. And then I think the Greens will surprise. If people can really vote for the Greens without worrying about the Republicans, who knows? If we had a guy like Ralph Nader running, we'd probably win.
We were talking about socialism earlier. What is it about the United States that, and this is me doing a devil's advocate, this is not my actual beliefs. What makes you think that the United States can do socialism and not end up in a dictatorship like Stalinist Russia, or in a situation like Maoist China with whatever people hate about that, or eating rats like they supposedly do in Venezuela? Doesn't socialism make countries poor and authoritarian just by its very nature? Or is there something historical that could have impacts on that?
Well, I don't believe any of those countries are socialist. I don't believe we've had a socialist nation state. We have socialist institutions like 2,000 municipal public power companies around the country, like your credit union, maybe your food co-op. These are democratic economic institutions. What socialism would do is generalize that. And what you had in Stalinist Russia and Maoist China, or Xi's China, or in Venezuela, is you have a bureaucratic class administering the state sector of the economy for their own benefit. The workers didn't have control, the communities didn't have control because they didn't have democracy. As Rosa Luxemburg said, you can't have socialism without democracy. When she criticized Lenin for banning other parties, during the Civil War after the Russian Revolution, Rosa Luxemburg was right, I believe.
All right, Howie. I want to thank you so much for your time. I know what a busy man you are, and I really, really am flattered you take this time out to speak with me and to the Greens of Florida and at large. Do you have any final words that you'd like to say on the way out?
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation, and anytime you want to do it again, I'd be happy to do it.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sacrificing those 2 years of your life to help the Green Party continue to grow and flourish and get our message out there. Thank you for all you've done throughout your life to blaze that trail and give us all these ideas that are maybe possibly coming to a place where we can realize them. You have a wonderful day, and I hope that we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.